My husband's sister spent a year pretending to like me just to frame me for cheating. My sister-in-law and I have never gotten along, and it started the very first time we met. When she found out I grew up poor, that my family moved between shelters when I was a kid, she looked at me like I was dirt on her shoe. She told me I should be grateful her brother even looked my way, because women like me don't end up with men like him. I wanted to say something back, but I've never been good at confrontation, so I swallowed it and moved on. That was my first mistake. Every family gathering after that, she found ways to remind me where I came from. She made comments about my clothes, my job, my parents. The worst was when she said my parents clearly didn't try hard enough at life, and that's why they ended up homeless. That one broke me. My parents sacrificed everything for me and gave me every opportunity they could. Hearing her dismiss them made something snap. We got into a screaming match at a family barbecue, and I left in tears. After that, I told my husband I was done. I couldn't be around her anymore. He understood and told me things about his sister I hadn't known. How she always looked down on anyone she considered beneath her. How she flaunted their family's money like it made her superior. Their parents enabled it, and my husband had distanced himself years ago because of it. When we got engaged, we decided not to invite her to our wedding. His family lost their minds. There were phone calls, accusations, guilt trips. Some relatives stopped speaking to him entirely, but he stood by me and we got married without her there. For 2 years, we had no contact with her. Then about a year ago, she reached out. She texted my husband saying she missed him, that she was sorry for how she treated me, and wanted to make things right. He showed me the message and asked what I wanted to do. I thought about it for a week and told him to give her one more chance. She asked to meet for coffee to apologize in person. I pushed it off for a month, but when we finally met, she seemed genuine. She apologized for every cruel thing she had said, admitted she had been entitled and wrong, and asked if we could start fresh. I told her we would never be close, but I could be civil. For the next year, things were fine. We saw each other at holidays, exchanged small talk, kept things polite. I started to believe she had changed. Then last week happened. I was home on my day off when my husband came through the door looking like someone had punched him. He didn't say hello. He just asked for my phone. I handed it over without hesitating, and he scrolled through it for 5 minutes while I stood there confused. When he looked up, he asked if I had anything I wanted to tell him. I had no idea what he meant. He showed me his phone. His sister had sent him a screenshot of a Tinder profile. My name, my photos, my city, a fully filled out profile saying I was looking to meet people. My heart stopped. I told him it wasn't real, that I had never made that profile, that someone was setting me up. He stared at me, and I could see him deciding whether to believe me. I grabbed my phone and showed him my app history, my download records, everything. There was no Tinder. There never had been. He believed me. We both knew who was behind it. My husband texted his sister saying he didn't buy it, that he needed more proof. Her response was defensive. She asked how he could be so naive when the profile was right in front of his face. She had nothing else. No messages, no matches, nothing beyond a profile she clearly created herself. I was shaking. A year of pretending to be my friend. A year of fake apologies and polite smiles. All a setup to destroy my marriage. My husband told me to wait before doing anything. He said he had something on her, something she would never want getting out. He told me about a video from years back. His sister, completely drunk at a party, squatting down and relieving herself feet away from a homeless man sleeping on the sidewalk while her friends laughed and recorded. My husband had a copy. He texted her saying he knew she faked the profile. He told her if she didn't admit everything, he would make sure everyone saw what kind of person she really was. She called immediately, sobbing and begging him not to share it. She confessed to everything. She said she still believed I wasn't good enough for her family, that she couldn't stand watching her brother happy with someone like me, and thought if she could prove I was unfaithful, he would finally leave. My husband screenshotted her confession and was about to send it to the family group chat when his phone rang again. It wasn't his sister this time. It was his mother. She said she already knew what happened because his sister had just called her crying. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. She told my husband that before he did anything drastic, there was something he needed to know about me, something his sister found during her little investigation that she hadn't shared with him yet. My hands won't stop shaking as I wait for her to keep talking. My husband squeezes my fingers tight and speaks into the phone with a voice I've never heard him use with his mother before. He tells her she has 30 seconds to say whatever she needs to say, and after that he's hanging up and blocking her number. The silence stretches out for what feels like forever. Then she starts talking again, and her voice sounds different now. All the fake sweetness is gone. She tells him that his sister found something during her investigation into me, something I never told him about. She says I was fired from a job 7 years ago for stealing money from the register. She claims his sister has all the paperwork proving I was fired for theft. My stomach drops. I feel like someone just punched all the air out of my lungs. The accusation is true on paper, but everything about it is wrong. I was 19 years old, working at a convenience store near my parents' apartment. My manager was stealing from the register every single shift and blaming it on the employees. He fired 3 of us in 1 month, all for the same reason, all with the same fake documentation. I never stole anything. My husband turns to look at me and I can see the question in his eyes. He asks me straight out if what his mother just said is true. His voice doesn't sound angry or accusing. It sounds confused. I nod and watch his face change. I start explaining as fast as I can. I tell him about being 19 and desperate for any job I could get. I tell him about the manager who would pocket money during every shift and then claim the drawer was short. I tell him about the 3 employees who got fired that month, all of us accused of the same thing. I tell him how the manager got caught 2 months later when someone finally installed cameras. I tell him how the police arrested him and cleared everyone he had blamed. I tell him I was never charged with anything because there was never any real evidence. My husband's mother cuts in before I can finish. She says it doesn't matter what the truth is. She says what matters is how it looks. She says I should have told her son about being fired for theft, even if the accusation was false. She says the fact that I hid it proves I have things to hide. She says maybe his sister was right to investigate me. She says where there's smoke, there's fire. My husband's response comes so fast it makes me jump. He tells his mother that a false accusation from 7 years ago means absolutely nothing. His voice gets louder as he keeps talking. He points out that I was a teenager making minimum wage trying to survive. He points out that his sister is a grown woman who spent a year pretending to be my friend, just so she could create a fake dating profile and try to destroy our marriage. He tells his mother there's no comparison between the two situations. I can hear his mother trying to interrupt, but he talks right over her. His mother changes her approach. Her voice gets soft and pleading. She begs him to really think about this. She asks him to consider that maybe I'm not who he thinks I am. She suggests that maybe his sister was just trying to protect him from someone with a past that raises questions. She says I might be using him for his money and his family's connections. She says he needs to be realistic about why someone like me would want to be with someone like him. Something inside me breaks open. I grab the phone from my husband's hand. I tell her I've had enough of her family's assumptions about me. I tell her that being poor doesn't make someone a criminal. I tell her that losing a minimum wage job as a teenager doesn't justify what her daughter did. I tell her that spending a year manipulating someone and creating fake evidence is actual criminal behavior, not some false accusation from years ago. I tell her that her daughter admitted everything, that we have the confession in writing, and that no amount of digging into my past changes what her daughter did. My husband takes the phone back and tells his mother the conversation is over. He says if she wants to keep making excuses for his sister and attacking me, that's her choice. He says we won't be part of it anymore. He says we're done with people who think money makes them better than everyone else. His mother makes one final attempt. She says if we cut them off, we'll regret it. She says we'll need family support eventually, and we'll be sorry we burned these bridges. She says family is supposed to stick together no matter what. My husband tells her we already have family support from people who actually respect us. He tells her his sister can keep her fake apologies, and his mother can keep her classist judgments. Then he ends the call. After hanging up, my husband sets his phone down on the coffee table and we both just sit there. The silence feels heavy and thick. I can hear the clock ticking in the kitchen and the sound of cars passing outside our window. My hands are still shaking from the conversation. He reaches over and takes my hand in his. His palm feels warm and solid against mine. He looks at me and tells me he's sorry. He says he's ashamed of how his family treats me, that he should have shut it down more forcefully years ago instead of just keeping distance. His voice cracks a little when he says it. I squeeze his hand back because I don't know what else to do. My throat feels tight and I'm afraid if I try to talk I'll start crying. He keeps going, saying he knew his mother enabled his sister, but he didn't realize how deep it went until tonight. He thought giving them space and setting boundaries would be enough. He was wrong. I finally find my voice and tell him about the convenience store job. The words come out slow at first, then faster as I explain everything. I tell him I was 19 and working minimum wage, that my manager was stealing from the register and blaming employees when the money came up short. I explain how I was one of 3 people fired that month, how scared I was because I needed that job to help pay rent. I tell him about the police investigation that happened 2 months later, how they arrested the manager and cleared all of us. I explain that even though I was cleared, even though I never stole anything, the experience made me feel dirty and ashamed for years. I felt like I had to prove I wasn't a thief every single day at every job after that. I never brought it up because it embarrassed me, because I worried people would judge me for it even though I didn't do anything wrong. My husband listens without interrupting. When I finish, he pulls out his phone and starts searching. His fingers move fast across the screen. He finds old news articles about the manager's arrest within minutes. There are 3 different articles from the local paper covering the investigation and the charges. He screenshots each one, then shows me the screen. The articles mention that several employees were wrongfully terminated and later cleared of any wrongdoing. He says we need documentation of the truth, not just his sister's twisted version of events. He keeps scrolling and finds the manager's court records showing he pleaded guilty to theft and fraud. He screenshots those too. I watch him work and feel something loosen in my chest. Having proof feels important even though I know the truth. He asks for the exact dates I worked there and I give him the information from memory. He makes notes in his phone about everything. We spend the next hour trying to reach the tech person who helped us with the fake Tinder profile. My husband calls twice, but it goes to voicemail. He leaves a detailed message explaining what his mother said about the employment records and asking if there's any way to track how his sister got that information. He texts the same information in case the call doesn't go through clearly. While we wait for a call back, he searches online for information about employment records and privacy laws. He reads parts out loud to me. Most sites say that old employment records aren't supposed to be accessible to random people without permission. The information is protected by privacy laws in most states. He wonders out loud if his sister paid for a background check service, or somehow convinced someone at the old company to share my file. He says either way it might be illegal depending on how she got the records. I feel sick thinking about her digging through my past like that. The tech person calls back around 9 at night. My husband puts the phone on speaker so I can hear. He explains the new accusation and asks about tracking where his sister got my employment information. The tech person asks a bunch of questions about what exactly my mother-in-law said and what details his sister supposedly has. My husband tells him everything he can remember from the call. The tech person goes quiet for a minute, then explains that employment records from 7 years ago wouldn't be in any public database. He says his sister either paid for a premium background check service that pulls from private databases, or she somehow got someone at my old company to give her information directly. He explains that both options could be illegal depending on the methods used and what information she obtained. Background check services have strict rules about who can request reports and for what purposes. Personal vendettas don't qualify as legitimate reasons. If she lied about her purpose or identity to get the report, that's fraud. If she convinced someone at the company to share my file, that person violated privacy policies and possibly broke laws. The tech person says he can try to find out which background check services were used if we can get access to her computer or phone records. Otherwise, it will be hard to prove. Something clicks in my brain while we're talking. I suddenly remember the coffee meetings with his sister during our supposed reconciliation. She asked me questions about my life that seemed innocent at the time. She wanted to know about my first jobs and early work experiences. She acted interested and supportive, like she was trying to understand me better. One time she specifically asked about the hardest job I ever had and whether I'd ever had conflicts with bosses or coworkers. I thought she was just making conversation and trying to bond. Now I realize she was fishing for information to use against me. She was building her case while pretending to care about getting to know me better. Every smile was fake. Every question had a purpose. I tell my husband this and watch his expression change. His jaw tightens and his eyes go dark. He puts the pieces together out loud. His sister spent an entire year playing a long game. The fake Tinder profile wasn't some spontaneous act of jealousy or a moment of bad judgment. It was the end result of months of planning and information gathering. She pretended to reconcile so she could get close enough to collect ammunition. She asked careful questions and took mental notes. She probably started researching me the moment we agreed to give her another chance. The profile was supposed to be her proof, her smoking gun that would make him leave me. When that didn't work because we caught it too fast, she had the employment thing ready as backup. She planned for multiple angles of attack. My husband's hands curl into fists on his lap. He thanks the tech person and ends the call. The next morning, I wake up early and call my best friend from childhood. Her name is Jolene, and she's known me since we were 12. She answers on the third ring, sounding sleepy. I apologize for calling before 8, but tell her I need to talk. She hears something in my voice and tells me to hold on while she makes coffee. I hear her moving around her apartment, the sound of water running and a coffee maker starting. When she comes back on the line, I explain everything that happened. I tell her about the fake profile, the confession, the phone call from my mother-in-law about the convenience store job. She gets quiet while I talk. When I finish, she's furious. She says words I won't repeat here about my sister-in-law. She immediately offers to write a statement about what really happened back then. I'd almost forgotten that Jolene worked at the same store. She was one of the other employees who got fired that month. We were both 19 and scared and confused about why we were being blamed for missing money. She remembers everything clearly. She tells me she still has documentation from when we were both cleared, including a letter from the district attorney's office explaining the manager's arrest and confirming we had nothing to do with the thefts. She kept it all these years in case she ever needed proof for future job applications. She says she'll scan everything and email it to me today. She also offers to write down her memories of what happened and sign it. She wants to help however she can. Hearing her voice and her immediate support makes me want to cry. She tells me I deserve better than how his family treats me. She reminds me that I've worked hard for everything I have, and nobody gets to make me feel small because of where I started. After we hang up, my husband suggests we contact someone he knows who's an attorney. His name is Russell Zimmerman, and he's a family friend who helped my husband with some contract issues at work last year. My husband wants legal advice about our options. He wants to know if his sister's actions count as harassment or defamation under the law. He wants to know if obtaining my employment records illegally gives us grounds for legal action. He picks up his phone and sends Russell a text, asking if he has time to talk about a family situation that might need legal guidance. Russell responds within 10 minutes saying he can meet us this afternoon at his office. My husband confirms the time and writes down the address. We spend the rest of the morning gathering all our documentation. We print the screenshots of his sister's confession. We save the fake Tinder profile images. We organize the news articles about the convenience store manager. We wait for Jolene's email with her documents. Everything feels like it's building towards something bigger, and I don't know if I'm ready for it. Jolene's email arrives around noon with everything she promised. She scanned the letter from the district attorney's office, the one that cleared both of us after the manager got arrested. She also wrote out her own statement about what happened, how the manager was taking money for weeks, and blaming different employees each time. She signed it and dated it. I save everything to a folder on my computer and feel some of the weight lift off my chest. Having proof matters. Having someone who remembers the truth matters even more. Russell's office sits in a newer building downtown with glass doors and polished floors. We arrive 15 minutes early and wait in the lobby until his assistant calls us back. Russell stands when we enter, shakes both our hands, and gestures to the chairs across from his desk. He looks about 50 with gray at his temples and wireframe glasses. My husband starts explaining everything while I sit there trying not to fidget. He tells Russell about the fake Tinder profile, shows him the screenshots of his sister's confession, explains about the old job firing and how his mother tried to use it against me. Russell listens without interrupting, his face getting more serious as the story unfolds. When my husband finishes, Russell leans back in his chair and asks to see all the documentation. We hand over our phones and he scrolls through everything slowly, zooming in on certain parts, reading the confession multiple times. He pulls up the news articles about the convenience store manager on his own computer and reads those too. After about 10 minutes of silence, he sets our phones down and looks at both of us. Russell explains that what his sister did could count as identity theft because she created a profile using my name and photos without permission. The harassment part is clear too, since she spent a year pretending to be my friend just to set me up. He says the fake profile combined with her confession shows she planned this for months, which makes it worse in legal terms. The employment records are trickier because we don't know exactly how she got them, but if she paid someone at my old company to share private information, or if she accessed records she wasn't supposed to see, that could be illegal too. He writes notes while he talks, underlining certain phrases. My husband asks what our options are. Russell says we could file a police report for identity theft and let them investigate. We could also sue his sister for damages if we wanted to go that route. But then he stops, and his expression changes. Russell warns us that taking legal action against family gets messy fast. He says even if we have a strong case, it will take months and cost money and drain us emotionally. Court dates, depositions, lawyers, all of it becomes this weight you carry around. He suggests we try setting clear boundaries first, and keep legal action as a backup plan if she doesn't stop. He says sometimes just knowing you could take legal steps is enough to make someone back off. My husband asks what kind of boundaries he means. Russell suggests a cease and desist letter that spells out exactly what she did and tells her to leave us alone completely. He says he can write it in legal language that makes it clear we're serious and that we know what crimes she might have committed. That way, if she keeps harassing us, we have documentation showing we warned her first. My husband thinks about this for a minute, then asks Russell to draft the letter. He wants it to list everything his sister did wrong and explain what could happen legally if she continues. Russell agrees and says he'll have it ready in a few days. He'll send it certified mail so we have proof she received it. He also suggests we document everything from this point forward. Save any texts, emails, or social media messages. Keep a log of any contact attempts. If this ends up in court later, having a clear record of her behavior will help our case. We thank him and schedule a follow-up appointment for next week. Walking out of his office, I feel like we actually have a plan instead of just reacting to whatever his family throws at us next. That evening, my husband sits on the couch with his phone in his hand for almost 20 minutes. He keeps opening the family group chat, then closing it again. I sit next to him and wait. Finally, he takes a deep breath and sends the screenshot of his sister's confession. He types out a message explaining that she admitted to making the fake Tinder profile, that her accusations about my job are based on something from 7 years ago that was proven false. When my manager got arrested for theft, and that we need space from family contact for a while. He hits send and puts his phone face down on the coffee table. We both stare at it like it might explode. The responses start coming in less than 5 minutes later. His phone buzzes constantly. I watch the screen light up over and over. Some messages are short, just question marks or confused emojis. Others are longer. His cousin sends 3 messages saying she can't believe his sister would do something like this. His uncle asks if we're sure about what happened. Another cousin takes his sister's side and says there must be more to the story. Someone suggests we all just sit down and talk it out like adults. The messages keep coming and my husband doesn't respond to any of them. He just watches them pile up. His father sends a private message that pops up as a separate notification. My husband opens it and reads it out loud. Corbin says he's disappointed in what his daughter did. He admits he knew she had issues with jealousy, but never thought she would plan something this cruel and calculated. He says he doesn't know what to say except that he's sorry, and he understands if we need time away from the family. My husband types back a simple thank you and nothing else. His mother floods the group chat with messages defending his sister. She says everyone needs to calm down and stop overreacting. She claims his sister was just worried about her brother's marriage and made some bad choices, but that doesn't make her a terrible person. She says families work through problems. They don't air them out in group chats for everyone to judge. She types in all caps that people need to stop attacking her daughter. My husband reads each message as it comes in and his jaw gets tighter. He finally responds in the group chat. He writes that making a fake dating profile and spending 12 months manipulating someone isn't a bad choice or a mistake. He calls it deliberate emotional abuse. He says he's disappointed his mother cares more about protecting his sister than admitting what she did was wrong. He types that his sister confessed to everything and there's no other side to the story. Then he mutes the group chat notifications because his phone won't stop buzzing. Private messages start coming in from other relatives. His aunt sends a long text saying she's always known his sister was spoiled and that his mother enabled her behavior for years. She shares a story about how his sister once got a coworker fired because the woman didn't compliment her outfit. She says his sister has a pattern of going after people she thinks are beneath her or threatening to her somehow. She tells us she supports whatever we decide to do. 2 more cousins send similar messages. One admits he stopped bringing his girlfriend to family events because his sister made rude comments about her weight. Another says his sister once told her she dressed like she shopped at thrift stores and should try harder if she wanted to fit in with the family. Reading these messages makes me realize his sister's cruelty wasn't personal to me. It's just who she is to anyone she decides isn't good enough. My phone buzzes on the kitchen counter later that night, and I pick it up to see a wall of text from Valentina. The message goes on for paragraphs, switching between saying she's sorry and explaining why she did what she did. She writes that she was trying to protect her brother from making a mistake. She claims she really believed I was hiding something from him. She says she never meant for things to go this far, and that she just wanted him to see the truth about me before it was too late. The apology parts sound rehearsed, like she copied them from somewhere. The justification parts sound more like her real voice. She ends by asking if we can please talk this through as a family. I show my husband the message without saying anything. He reads it twice and shakes his head. We sit at the kitchen table for a while discussing what to do. Part of me wants to respond and tell her exactly what I think of her fake apology. Part of me wants to block her number and never hear from her again. My husband suggests we don't engage with her at all. He says responding will just give her an opening to keep pushing. We decide to let Russell handle everything from now on. My husband calls Russell the next morning and explains about Valentina's text message. Russell says he'll draft a formal cease and desist letter and send it certified mail so there's proof she received it. He tells us the letter will make it clear that all future communication needs to go through him as our legal representative. Russell asks if we want to include anything about potential legal action if she continues. My husband says yes. He wants Valentina to understand there will be real consequences if she doesn't stop. Russell says he'll have the letter ready by the end of the week. 2 days pass quietly. My husband and I try to focus on normal life, but the tension sits heavy in our house. We both know his family won't just let this go. On Thursday afternoon, I'm working from home when I hear a car door slam outside. I look out the front window and see Francine walking up our driveway. My stomach drops. I call for my husband, who's in the other room. He comes to the window and his whole body tenses when he sees his mother. The doorbell rings 3 times in quick succession. My husband walks to the door but doesn't open it. He calls through the wood asking what she wants. Francine's voice is muffled but loud. She says she needs to talk to us right now. My husband tells her we're not ready for a conversation and asks her to leave. She refuses. Her voice gets louder and I can hear her starting to cry. She says she's not leaving until we talk to her. My husband looks back at me and I can see him weighing his options. He tells me to stay inside and opens the door just enough to step out onto the porch, pulling it shut behind him. I move to the living room window where I can see them better. Francine is already grabbing at my husband's arm. Her face is red and tears are running down her cheeks. I can't hear everything they're saying, but I catch pieces. Francine keeps saying something about forgiveness and family. My husband has his arms crossed and he's shaking his head. Francine gets more upset and starts gesturing wildly. She points at the house, probably meaning me. My husband steps back and holds up one hand like he's trying to get her to calm down. The conversation goes on for several minutes. Francine shifts between crying and talking rapidly. At one point, she grabs both of my husband's hands and I can see her begging. He pulls his hands away gently but firmly. She wipes her face and tries again. She's saying something over and over. My husband's posture stays rigid. He's not giving in to whatever she's asking. My husband starts talking more, and Francine's expression changes from pleading to defensive. Her mouth opens like she's shocked by what he's saying. She tries to interrupt, but he keeps going. His hands move as he talks, emphasizing his points. Francine's tears stop, and now she looks angry. She says something back, and my husband's jaw clenches. I can see him getting more upset. Whatever she just said made things worse. He points toward her car. She doesn't move. He points again, more firmly this time. Francine crosses her arms and plants her feet. They're both standing stiffly now, neither one backing down. Francine starts talking again, and my husband cuts her off immediately. His hand comes up in a stop gesture. She tries to keep going, but he talks over her. Even from inside, I can tell his voice is getting louder. Francine's face goes from angry to hurt. She says something else, and my husband takes a step back like she just hit him. He responds with what looks like one word. No, Francine reaches for him again, and he moves further away. He points at her car one more time. This time his whole arm extends and his finger stabs toward the driveway. Francine stands there for a moment looking at him. Then she turns and walks quickly to her car. She gets in and sits there for a minute before starting the engine. My husband stays on the porch watching until she drives away. When he comes back inside, his hands are shaking. He goes straight to the kitchen and gets a glass of water. I follow him and wait for him to be ready to talk. He drinks the whole glass before setting it down on the counter. He tells me his mother begged him to forgive Valentina and give her another chance. She kept saying family should stick together no matter what happens. She said Valentina made a mistake, but she's still his sister, and cutting her off is too extreme. My husband told her that family loyalty doesn't mean accepting abuse and manipulation. He explained that what Valentina did wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate campaign that took a whole year to plan and execute. He said that has to have consequences or she'll just do it again. Francine didn't want to hear that. She kept insisting we were overreacting and that families work through problems. My husband told her we are working through it by setting boundaries and protecting ourselves. Then Francine brought up my employment history again. She suggested maybe Valentina's concerns weren't completely wrong. My husband says he cut her off immediately. He told her that bringing up false accusations from 7 years ago proves she's more interested in defending Valentina than understanding the real problem. He said if she can't see the difference between being wrongfully accused as a teenager and deliberately framing someone for cheating, then she's part of the problem. That's when Francine got really upset. My husband tells me he gave her a choice. He said she needs to leave and think seriously about whether she wants to enable Valentina's behavior or have a relationship with us. He told her the choice is hers, but we won't accept being treated this way anymore. Then he asked her to leave. My husband sits down at the kitchen table and puts his head in his hands. He looks exhausted. He says this is harder than he expected. He admits he loves his family, but he can't ignore how they've treated me. He's struggling with the guilt of choosing between his wife and his mother. I can see how much this is costing him. His family has been part of his whole life, and now he's having to cut them off. I sit down next to him and tell him we should find a family therapist. Someone who can help us figure out how to handle these boundaries and process everything that's happening. He looks up at me and nods slowly. He says he thinks he needs professional guidance on how to maintain his own mental health while dealing with his family's problems. He admits he doesn't know how to do this on his own. I spend that evening searching for therapists who work with family conflict and toxic relationships. I find several options and narrow it down to 3 who have good reviews and experience with situations like ours. My husband and I go through them together and pick one whose approach seems like the best fit. I call the next morning and explain our situation briefly to the receptionist. She gets us an appointment for the following week. The days leading up to the appointment feel long. My husband is quieter than usual. He's processing everything, and I give him space to do that. We don't hear from Francine or Valentina. The family group chat stays quiet. Russell calls to confirm the cease and desist letter was delivered and signed for. He says if Valentina contacts us again after receiving it, we have grounds for a restraining order. The day of our first therapy session arrives. We drive to the office in silence. The waiting room is small and calm with soft lighting. The therapist comes out to get us right on time. She's middle-aged with kind eyes and a warm smile. She leads us to her office, and we sit on a comfortable couch while she takes a chair across from us. She asks us to tell her what brought us in. My husband and I take turns laying out the whole situation. The years of Valentina's cruelty, the fake reconciliation, the Tinder profile, the confession, Francine's phone call and the accusations about my past, the family group chat explosion, Francine showing up at our house. All of it comes pouring out. The therapist listens carefully and takes notes. She asks clarifying questions, but mostly just lets us talk. When we finish, she sits back and looks at us thoughtfully. She says she can already see some patterns forming that we might not have fully recognized yet. She asks if we're ready to explore those patterns, and we both say yes. She starts by talking about family systems and how they work when one person gets all the blame while another person gets away with everything. The therapist uses words like scapegoat and golden child, explaining that these roles get assigned early and stick around because they serve a purpose for the family. She says, I became the scapegoat the moment I entered this family because I was different, because I came from poverty, because I represented something that threatened their sense of superiority. The therapist looks directly at my husband and tells him that his mother's enabling isn't really about protecting Valentina. It's about keeping the whole system running smoothly, maintaining a structure where certain people can be treated badly, as long as they're the right targets. She says Francine needs someone to look down on just as much as Valentina does, which is why she defended her daughter's actions instead of calling them what they were. Now, my husband asks if his mother will ever change, and the therapist pauses before answering. She explains that change is possible, but requires Francine to examine beliefs she's held her entire life, to admit that wealth doesn't make her better than anyone else, and that's incredibly hard work most people avoid. The therapist helps us create a list of boundaries we can actually enforce. We write down that we're willing to see family members who treat us with respect, but we won't attend events where Valentina will be present until she demonstrates real change over time. We decide that if anyone makes comments about my background, we leave immediately without explanation or argument. We agree that our home is a safe space, and anyone who violates that loses the privilege of being invited back. 2 days later, my husband's phone rings during dinner. It's his father asking to meet for lunch, just the two of them. My husband looks at me and I nod, telling him I think he should go. The next afternoon, my husband drives to meet Corbin at a restaurant downtown. When he comes home 3 hours later, he looks tired but less angry than he's been in weeks. He sits down and tells me everything. Corbin admitted that he's watched Valentina act entitled and cruel for years without doing enough to stop it. He said he always told himself she would grow out of it, that it was just a phase. But he knows now that his silence made things worse. My husband says his father actually apologized for not standing up for me earlier, for letting Francine and Valentina make me feel unwelcome in the family. Corbin told him that he's been having serious talks with Francine about her part in all this. She's defensive and keeps trying to minimize what happened, but Corbin thinks she's starting to understand that this isn't something she can smooth over with time. He asked my husband what it would take for us to consider fixing things with the family. My husband tells me he laid out exactly what we need. First, a real apology from Valentina that doesn't make excuses or try to justify what she did. Second, Francine has to admit she enabled bad behavior and take responsibility for that. Third, the whole family needs to commit to treating me with respect, no matter where I came from or how much money my parents had. Corbin didn't promise anything but said he would work on it. The next few weeks pass quietly. We stay in touch with Corbin through occasional texts and one more lunch meeting. A couple of my husband's aunts and uncles reach out privately to say they support us and think we're handling this the right way. The family group chat that exploded with messages after the Tinder incident has gone silent. It seems like everyone finally understands this isn't going to be fixed with a quick conversation and some forced apologies. My mother calls one evening and invites us over for dinner on Saturday. We haven't seen my parents much during all this chaos, and I realize I've been avoiding them because I felt ashamed that my husband's family thinks so little of where I come from. When we arrive at their small house on Saturday, my mother hugs me tight and my father shakes my husband's hand. We sit around their kitchen table eating the same simple food I grew up with, and my mother tells me she's proud of how I'm standing up for myself. She says she knows it's not easy, that she raised me to be polite and avoid conflict, but sometimes you have to fight for your own dignity. My father looks at my husband and says he's glad I married someone who actually values me, someone who doesn't care that we lived in shelters when I was little, or that we struggled to make ends meet. After dinner, my parents and I sit on their back porch while my husband helps with dishes inside. My mother asks how I'm really doing, and something breaks open inside me. I tell her about the shame I've carried for years, how I've always felt like I had to prove I was good enough, like my poverty was something I needed to apologize for. I tell her about every cruel comment Valentina made, every time Francine looked at me like I was beneath them, every moment I felt small and worthless because I didn't grow up with money. My mother takes my hand and reminds me that she and my father worked every day of their lives, that they loved me and gave me every opportunity they could manage. She says that's what matters, not the opinions of people who think bank accounts determine someone's worth. My father adds that they're not ashamed of how we lived, and I shouldn't be either. He says they did the best they could with what they had, and that's more than a lot of wealthy people can say. Sitting there with my parents, I realize something that should have been obvious all along. I've been carrying Valentina and Francine's judgments around like they were facts, like their opinion of me was somehow true. I've spent years trying to prove I'm good enough for this family, instead of recognizing that their standards were garbage from the start. My worth isn't determined by my parents' income or whether we had stable housing when I was a kid. The problem was never me or my background. The problem was always their snobbery, their need to feel superior, their inability to see value in anything that doesn't come with a price tag. 3 weeks after the initial confrontation with Valentina, my husband's phone rings. It's Russell calling with an update. He tells us that Valentina violated the cease and desist letter by creating a fake social media account to monitor our posts. The private investigator we hired has been watching for exactly this kind of thing, and he documented everything. He tracked the account through IP addresses and posting patterns that link directly back to Valentina. My husband picks up his phone and calls Russell right away. His voice is flat when he tells Russell to prepare a formal harassment lawsuit against Valentina. He's done with warnings and second chances. He explains about the fake social media account, how the private investigator documented everything, how Valentina can't seem to stop herself from trying to interfere in our lives. Russell says he'll draft the paperwork and have it ready to file by the end of the week. My husband thanks him and hangs up. He looks exhausted, like this whole situation has drained something essential out of him. I tell him I support whatever he needs to do, that I'm tired of living under constant surveillance from someone who claims to want reconciliation. He nods and pulls me close, and we sit there on the couch not saying anything for a long time. The next morning, my husband's phone rings while we're eating breakfast. It's Corbin. My husband puts it on speaker, and Corbin's voice comes through sounding panicked and desperate. He begs us to hold off on the lawsuit, says Valentina has agreed to go to therapy, that she wants to write us a real apology this time. Corbin explains that Valentina broke down crying after she found out we hired a private investigator, that she finally realized how serious this has become. He's asking for one more chance to handle this as a family before lawyers and courts get involved. My husband looks at me and I can see he's conflicted. Part of him wants to move forward with legal action because Valentina has proven she can't be trusted. But another part of him still cares about his family and wants to believe change is possible. He tells Corbin we'll think about it and call him back. After we hang up, my husband and I spend the rest of the morning going back and forth about what to do. We have a therapy appointment that afternoon, and we bring this new development to our therapist. She listens carefully as we explain Corbin's phone call and Valentina's supposed commitment to therapy. Our therapist asks us what we hope to gain from either option. Legal action would set clear consequences and protect us legally, but it would also burn bridges with my husband's family permanently. Giving Valentina another chance might allow for actual healing, but it also risks being manipulated again if she's not genuine. Our therapist helps us see that we're not choosing between right and wrong, but between two different kinds of risk. She suggests we give Valentina a specific time frame with clear conditions. 2 weeks to start therapy and provide a written apology. If she follows through, we can consider what comes next. If she doesn't, we move forward with the lawsuit without guilt. My husband and I agree this feels like a middle path that protects us while leaving room for possible reconciliation. 10 days go by and I check the mail every day expecting nothing. Then a registered letter arrives with Valentina's name in the return address. My hands shake as I sign for it. I wait for my husband to get home from work before opening it. We sit at the kitchen table and he carefully tears open the envelope. The letter is 3 pages long, handwritten on nice paper. My husband reads the first paragraph out loud and then stops. His expression shifts from guarded to surprised. He hands me the letter and I start reading. Valentina acknowledges everything she did. The fake Tinder profile, the year of pretending to be my friend, the fake social media account to monitor us. She admits she was jealous and insecure, that she couldn't handle seeing her brother happy with someone she considered beneath their family. She takes full responsibility for the harm she caused. She doesn't make excuses or try to shift blame onto anyone else. She says she understands if we never forgive her, but she wanted us to know she's working on herself and recognizes how wrong she was. The second page of the letter goes deeper. Valentina explains that she's been seeing a therapist 3 times a week since our last confrontation. She's been diagnosed with anxiety and something her therapist called an unhealthy attachment to status and wealth. She writes that she saw me as a threat because my presence forced her to look at her own shallow values. When I came into the family without money or connections, it made her question what really mattered. Instead of examining her own beliefs, she tried to push me out so she wouldn't have to face those uncomfortable questions. She admits this sounds like psychology talk, and maybe it is, but her therapist helped her see patterns she'd been blind to her whole life. The way she treats service workers, the way she judges people based on their clothes or cars, the way she uses money as a measure of someone's worth. She says seeing it written out in therapy made her sick to her stomach. The third page reveals even more. Valentina writes about feeling inadequate her whole life despite having everything money could buy. She talks about comparing herself to other wealthy women and always coming up short in her own mind. She admits she projected those feelings of inadequacy onto me because it was easier than dealing with her own issues. She targeted me because she saw me as vulnerable, someone she could push around to make herself feel powerful. She acknowledges this explanation doesn't excuse what she did, but she hopes it helps us understand why she became so fixated on destroying our marriage. She ends the letter by saying she doesn't expect us to respond or accept her apology. She just wanted us to know she's genuinely trying to change and that she's sorry for the pain she caused. My husband and I read the letter 3 more times that night. We keep looking for signs of manipulation, phrases that shift blame or make excuses. But the more we read it, the more genuine it seems. The next morning, we bring the letter to our therapy appointment. Our therapist reads it carefully and then goes back to certain paragraphs. She points out specific language that suggests real self-awareness. The way Valentina takes responsibility without qualifying it with but statements. The way she acknowledges the harm without making it about her own suffering. The way she gives us permission to not forgive her instead of demanding we accept her apology. Our therapist says this doesn't mean Valentina has completely changed, but it does suggest she's doing actual work on herself, rather than just trying to smooth things over. My husband and I spend the next few days discussing how to respond. We finally decide to write our own letter. We acknowledge Valentina's apology and tell her we appreciate the honesty. But we also make it clear that rebuilding trust will take a long time and consistent changed behavior. We outline specific boundaries. No unsolicited contact with us. No comments about my background or my family ever again. No interference in our marriage or our decisions. Respect for our relationship and our choices. We tell her that if she can maintain these boundaries and continue working on herself, we're open to slowly rebuilding some kind of family relationship. But if she violates any of these boundaries, we'll move forward with legal action without hesitation. My husband mails the letter and we both feel like we've done what we can do. A week later, another letter arrives. This one is from Francine. It's shorter than Valentina's and less detailed, but it still surprises me. Francine admits she enabled Valentina's bad behavior because she didn't want to see her daughter as capable of cruelty. She writes that it was easier to blame me for being too sensitive than to acknowledge Valentina was being cruel on purpose. She says she started seeing a therapist too and working on her own issues around status and family loyalty. She doesn't ask for forgiveness, just says she's sorry, and hopes we can find a path forward eventually. 2 days after Francine's letter arrives, Corbin calls again. This time his voice is calmer, more measured. He suggests a family meeting with our therapist present to discuss how we move forward. My husband asks what the ground rules would be. Corbin says he's been talking with Valentina's therapist and they both agree certain conditions need to be in place. No ambushing us with surprise family members, no ganging up on either of us. Everyone gets to speak without being interrupted. The focus stays on future boundaries, not rehashing the past. My husband tells Corbin we'll discuss it with our therapist and let him know. After the call ends, I realize something has shifted. We're not just reacting to Valentina's chaos anymore. We're setting the terms for how any reconciliation might happen. And that feels like progress. The family therapy session happens 2 weeks later in a small office with gray walls and comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. My husband and I arrive early and sit together while our therapist sets up. Valentina walks in 10 minutes later looking smaller than I've ever seen her, her eyes red and swollen. Francine and Corbin follow, along with my husband's aunt and uncle who asked to be there. Everyone settles into their seats and the therapist starts by explaining the ground rules. No interrupting, no attacking. Everyone speaks for themselves using I statements. The room feels thick with tension as Valentina clears her throat and begins talking. She admits to creating the fake Tinder profile and explains how she spent months planning it, gathering my photos, building the account slowly so it would look real. She describes the jealousy that ate at her every time she saw us together, how she convinced herself she was protecting her brother from someone unworthy. Her voice cracks when she talks about the year of fake friendship, how exhausting it was to pretend while hating me the whole time. Francine shifts in her seat but stays quiet. Valentina continues, talking about growing up with money and how it became her measure of worth, how she learned early that wealth meant superiority. She says she knows now how wrong that is, how therapy has shown her the damage those beliefs caused. My husband's aunt speaks up next, saying she's noticed the family's attitude about money for years. She talks about comments made at gatherings, little jokes about people who shop at certain stores or drive certain cars, remarks that always seemed harmless but added up to something ugly. Her husband nods and mentions a cousin who married someone from a working-class background and how the family treated them until they eventually divorced. The therapist asks me if I want to share my experience. My hands shake as I start talking about the years of small cuts, the comments about my clothes being from discount stores, the questions about whether my parents ever tried to better themselves. I describe the barbecue where Valentina said my parents didn't try hard enough at life, and how that moment broke something in me. I talk about other relatives making jokes about my used car, about someone asking if I knew how to use the fancy silverware at a formal dinner, about being treated like I should be grateful to be included in their world. Several relatives look shocked, and one of my husband's cousins actually gasps. Others look down at their hands or shift uncomfortably in their seats. My husband's uncle says he never realized how those comments sounded from my perspective. The therapist guides the conversation toward the bigger picture, asking the family to consider how their wealth has shaped their view of people without it. She talks about class prejudice and how it operates differently than other forms of discrimination, but causes real harm. She asks them to think about assumptions they make about people based on economic status, about whether they truly believe money makes someone more valuable as a person. Francine finally speaks, her voice tight with emotion. She admits she made excuses for Valentina because facing the truth meant admitting her daughter was capable of cruelty. She says she told herself I was too sensitive, that Valentina was just being honest, that family dynamics were complicated. She acknowledges now that she was wrong, that she enabled behavior she should have stopped years ago. The session lasts 2 hours and ends with the therapist giving everyone homework assignments about examining their own biases and practicing different ways of thinking about class and worth. Walking out to the parking lot, my husband squeezes my hand and tells me he's proud of me for speaking up. Over the following months, things slowly change. We start attending some family gatherings again with clear boundaries in place about acceptable behavior. Valentina is there sometimes, quieter than before, more careful with her words. She doesn't try to hug me or force conversation, just nods politely and keeps her distance. At Thanksgiving, she actually compliments my pie without any hint of condescension. Christmas, she asks genuine questions about my job without that familiar edge in her voice. The awkwardness between us remains, but the active hostility is gone. Francine makes different kinds of efforts, inviting me to coffee and asking about my work with what sounds like real interest. She wants to know about my childhood, my parents, what I studied in college. She tells me stories about her own mother who grew up poor during the Depression, how that history got buried under generations of wealth. She's not perfect, and sometimes old patterns slip through, but she catches herself now and apologizes. A year after everything exploded, my husband and I sit on our couch on a quiet Sunday morning drinking coffee and talking about how far we've come. The family relationships aren't perfect and probably never will be, but they're built on honesty now instead of polite silence. I've learned that my worth comes from who I am, not where I started, and that the opinions of people who judge based on bank accounts don't define me. My husband has learned that protecting our marriage sometimes means disappointing his family, that loyalty to me has to come first. We're building our own family culture based on respect and authenticity, choosing to value people for their character instead of their status. That feels like the real victory, not changing his family completely, but refusing to let their old patterns shape our life together.